Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Bonsoir, mes amis. Your Montreal Canadiens just played their game of the year. I did not think that this was going to turn out the way it was, the way it did. Sorry. I don't know if it's just that I am a pessimist in terms of individual games, or if I've been conditioned to believe that way of thinking. But it's been a while since the Canadiens have been in a position like they are right now, inside a playoff spot and playing in a way that inspires confidence. This is a different Montreal Canadiens team. Uh, I think that everyone knows that they've turned a corner, but I think that what they're doing now is beyond just turning a corner. They're laying the foundations for who they are. They're finding their identity. And we talked about this recently on Game Over. I see Zachary Dion in the chat here says Captain Nick clutches it in OT. Yes, Nick Suzuki, the most clutch player, I think, of his current generation. I think this is how he's going to be remembered when we look back on his career. I've almost run out of things to say about Nick Suzuki in big moments. And I know that there will be some who maybe aren't watching the Canadiens game in and game out and don't understand that he's been in big moments throughout this rebuild anyway. Because the way that Nick Suzuki approaches the game is that every game is a potential for those big moments. It doesn't matter if the game matters, because the game matters to Nick Suzuki. He makes it matter. His dogged determination, and I'll say the same thing about Lane Hutson. From the drop of the puck tonight, absolutely an incredible game from Lane Hutson. And he's not alone. There's a lot of names that we can mention tonight. And frankly, I think we do have to give every single player in the lineup some level of credit because of the way that they played this game. I think it's very easy to write off a single game because in the grand picture, they're not that important. But this one mattered. This one, after finally getting a win, after playing relatively okay in that stretch where they were losing, and in the last one against Florida, they ended in a piss poor, bad sportsmanship way. And the Canadiens are pissed. They are pissed. And how did they start this game? They laid the body every play. Every play. They did not give an inch. Now, in the third period, they did tire out 100%. But for the first 40 minutes, there was not a single easy play that was given to the Florida. You go back and watch that game, there's not an easy pass. Every play, there's a stick in there. They played so hard in this game. They earned this to a man. And thank goodness that the talented players came out in the end and found a way to get it home. Mentioned Lane Hutson and then got distracted. I want to talk quickly about Lane Hutson. Then we'll introduce the show and tell you what we're going to talk about tonight in a bit more detail. But Lane Hutson, from the drop of the puck tonight, what I noticed was strength and balance. There was a play in the second period, I believe, where Lane Hutson was trying to square off, or not square off, but like hold a Florida Panther to the outside, a player who's much bigger than him. And the player was trying to curl up along the boards and then cut in along the defensive blue line for the Canadiens. And Hutson just wouldn't let him. Way smaller. It does not have body position in a way that gives him an advantage. And he just forced the guy out of the zone. And that was the way that the Canadiens approached this entire game, was just make life difficult. Make it difficult for the Florida Panthers every time they get a chance. Because let's be clear, the Canadiens right now are nowhere near the Florida Panthers in terms of overall team quality, chances at winning a game, chances at winning a Stanley Cup. Nowhere close. But tonight they outplayed them every time it mattered. The Florida Panthers did not score a goal tonight off of their own sticks. All the goals went in off the sticks of the Montreal Canadiens. Yeah, Romelli says 2 unlucky goals for Monty. Again, yeah, and I saw there were some folks who were in Monty's grill a little bit. 2 shots that were from far out, but both tips were within the slot and changed direction on him really bad. Like, he was pretty much perfect tonight. The only shot that actually got through Montembeault from the Florida Panthers towards the inside of the net was the one at the end of the third there, or I guess it was midway through the third, that got cleaned up. I forget which player came in and took it, because there were so many players who were on the ball tonight. And, we all know this kind of game can't happen 82 times a year. No team can have all 20 players or 19 players laser focused on a game in this way 82 times a year. It just doesn't happen. Playoffs, you expect it, right? But this was a playoff game for the Montreal Canadiens, and I think they passed with flying colors. I am so impressed. Carrier saved it. Thank you, Outrage. That's right, Carrier. He was fantastic tonight also. Man, everybody was great. Let's be real. I mean, there were players who were weaker than others, of course. There were some tough moments, but remember that there's 2 teams on the ice. Pressure happens, and the Canadiens are still outmatched. It's one hell of a thing to sweep the Florida Panthers, the reigning Stanley Cup champions. Romelli says it was a Marchand shot. That's right. It was. It's funny. I didn't really notice Marchand until the third period. All right. So tonight, I do want to talk a bit about a few different things that I noticed in the game, and also some stuff moving forward. I want to talk about Brendan Gallagher and setting the tone. We're going to talk about that right away. I want to talk about Caden Gooley because, man, how can we not talk about that guy? How is he looking so good after coming back from such a ridiculous injury? And I just want to talk about what the future looks like for this team, because I don't know about you all, but I'm excited. I am really excited. All right, before we get too deep into this, let's roll our partners' information here. We are sponsored by 2 companies here in Montreal, Inchu Bijou and Le Saint Motel. They are amazing companies that put people first. And that's what we're trying to do here at Game Over. We're trying to do things in a way that elevates this space for you and makes a better space for all in this sport. Because frankly, I think we're all a little bit tired of the far right invasion into our media ecosphere. Let's actually do stuff that is welcoming for all kinds of fans. Because let's be real here, the demographics are changing, and it's a good thing. We need to be building situations where people feel welcome watching, and that's one of the things that is so cool about Inchu Bijou, is that they are a leader in this world in Montreal, making welcoming spaces for people from all over. So check out Inchu Bijou, all right? We are so excited to tell you about our new partner here at Game Over Montreal, a delightfully witchy goth and glam jewelry store making handcrafted art that varies from subtle silver to gold pieces to glamorous bespoke. Inchu Bijou is more than just a company. They've built a community through advocacy and a welcoming attitude that has made them an institution here in Montreal. Located in the historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, Inchu Bijou also runs seasonal themed markets called Maleficarum Market, or Marché Maleficarum en français, where artisans from all over get together and showcase and sell their wares. Drop by 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise, Suite 278, and say hi to Astrid and the Wicked team, or head to inchubijou.com and enhance your style. The next Maleficarum Market will be on the weekend of February 8th and 9th. We'll see you there. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out. Thanks, folks, for calling out that I was muted. As I said in the ad there, slightly less bearded. Please like this video. Please subscribe. It really helps us out. We are slowly but surely finding our audience here on Game Over Montreal after moving on from SDPN, but it has been a challenge. YouTube is not liking us algorithmically, and as you folks know who are with us every night, I'm seeing the YouTube chat is not caught up to where I am. I am unmuted. I am. I did read it. So we are live also in every other Canadian market across Canada for the NHL. We are a Canadian company that employs young, creative people in media across this great country. And frankly, there aren't very many jobs in this country for media people. So it's important. And that's why we hope that people support us. All right. Can you tell things are different? You know, I saw when I was watching the ad there, I was kind of going through the chat. I saw Trizak say, no topics for this one, just Nick Suzuki. And I got to say, I'm tempted. I'm tempted to just talk about Nick Suzuki for 60 minutes. Claire says, Andrew's just saying Suzuki Hudson. Yep. I mean, that's basically what we are, right? Every night is Suzuki, Hudson, and like the other guys chip in, of course. But those two guys have elevated to such a ridiculous degree right now that it's hard to look past them. You know, they are always the topic of conversation because they're always the ones making it happen. And I saw some frustration with Caulfield tonight online. You know, his offensive numbers maybe haven't been great lately, but I don't think his play necessarily has been lacking. I thought he had some good chances tonight, and he's been consistently getting chances. It's just a bad run, you know? And Hudson's at 57 assists already. 57 assists, guys. Lane Hudson. Cases, I can't believe you said about Brad Marchand. Yeah, oh, you're just filling in the blanks. Thank you. Yes, please fill in the blanks, Kay. That would be very helpful. So, Nick Suzuki, I mean, what else is there to say? I want to hear from you all. Let's hear what you think about Nick Suzuki. I'm going to read through the chat a little bit and just respond a bit because I think this is a game where I want your voices to be heard because, number one, I'm solo, and number two, this game was hype. Like, this game was so hype. It's been a while. My wife came down and watched the last 4 or 5 minutes, and she doesn't really care about hockey, so she wasn't, you know, into it or anything. But it's been a long time since I've reacted like very viscerally and loudly to a Montreal Canadiens goal. It's just my way of being a fan has changed as I've aged. But tonight, when Nick Suzuki found that Lane Hudson just shot at the net that tipped off a skate and went to the right spot, I screamed. And thankfully, I didn't wake up the kids. But yeah, this team has changed everything in the last little stretch here. It's really, really encouraging, and I hope that it has electrified you in the way that it's electrified me. The fact that Suzuki did it again in OT, like, what can you say, folks? What can you say about him? He just knows how to do it. He knows how to get to the right spot at the right time. He is keyed in always. All right. Kay is saying she had YouTube muted to prevent an echo when she streams and projected that I was muted still because she couldn't hear the stream. That's too funny. Yeah, I also mute YouTube while I'm streaming so that I can go in and see the comments live and not have my own voice echoing in my ear. So that's very relatable. Some behind the scenes, or what do they call that? Inside baseball for y'all in the chat there. All right, let's go through the chat here a little bit. Jay Carter says, give some flowers to Dvorak for winning that face-off in OT. Give some flowers to Dvorak for everything. Everything. Like, let's talk about Christian Dvorak for a few minutes here, because this is a player that I could probably not have been harder on since he came to Montreal in terms of, like, I haven't been unfair because the play up to this year has been not great, but I have not had a lot of good things to say about Christian Dvorak for most of his Montreal Canadiens tenure. However, right now and this year, he has been not just good, he's been money. He's been money. He's been dominating play at even strength. He hasn't been scoring necessarily, but he's not in a scoring role. And that line, Gallagher, Dvorak, and Anderson tonight were a meat grinder. for the Panthers. They just ate them alive on the forecheck. They just outworked them over and over again, outmuscled them. Anderson was a killer. Brendan Gallagher in the first period takes a knee to get a zone exit. And it's not just a zone exit and cough it up in the neutral zone. No, he finds a teammate in stride and creates a rush. And then he gets back into the play after being kneed and has another quality touch inside the offensive zone and sends the puck to Caden Gooley, who sets up a scoring chance. And did they score? No. But that play set the pace for the entire game. It set the stage. The veterans have frustrated the fans since the 2021 playoff run, Stanley Cup final run. A lot of it has been due to injury. You know, we've seen Brendan Gallagher look like his career was falling apart, and then he's slowly just built it back. We've seen Josh Anderson, you know, struggle incredibly and then have to deal with the weight of the contract. The fan base never really got off of Josh Anderson's side, though. If you remember that standing ovation after that, you know, incredibly tough goalless drought that he had, Christian Dvorak has been, you know, brought in to replace Danault and Kotkaniemi at once, an impossible position. Probably cost too much in terms of trade value, but at the same time, like, all these players put in these positions where it's so difficult to succeed, and then under the weight of it all, they're seen as these albatross contracts. Yoel Armia as well. They just have put it together and at times been there to carry the younger players on this team who have needed it when, like, the scoring has dried up, or maybe the effort level wasn't there, or the energy wasn't there. It's a total team effort. It really is. And I think that Dvorak deserves so much credit for what he's been able to accomplish this year, and he's not unique. I think that's the crazy thing is you look back at this team when they were putting it together. And I remember coming out of 2021, even after Kent Hughes took over, and I was like ready to start getting back on board with being a Habs fan again, because, you know, the young players are exciting, no longer has the stink of the Bergevin regime. I remember thinking, what are the chances that Cole Caulfield will be as good or better than Max Pacioretty? Like, probably pretty low. What are the chances that Nick Suzuki can be a number one center? Like, not super high at that stage, right? You could see the outline, but like, you're hoping for a great second line center in that guy, right? That's the hope. And like, maybe eye in the sky is better than that, but you're not banking on that. You know, what are the odds that Lane Hudson, who they drafted in the second round, is, you know, a comparable replacement for somebody like Subban or Markov or Weber or Petrie? Like, the odds are low. But what I underestimated was I was used to the Bergevin regime, where the idea for development was, if you're good enough, you'll show us and you'll make it. So you'll get the Brendan Gallaghers, you'll get the Arturi Lekkonens, but anybody who needs a bit of work to develop something to unlock potential falls through the cracks. And we saw that consistently. And I didn't expect the change to be as drastic as it has been under Kent Hughes and the investment that they've made in development, because I didn't realize how much of it was going to happen at the NHL level. We've been fed this bullshit lie for decades about the NHL not being a development league. The Montreal Canadiens, Martin St. Louis, Kent Hughes, Jeff Gorton, Adam Nicholas, they're proving that incorrect in real time. Name a player on the Montreal Canadiens who hasn't developed in some way. Even Josh Anderson, who has been a very limited player in terms of his utility, is now a primo penalty killer, is no longer an immediate giveaway every time he tries to make a pass. Like, he is playing in space with guys and finding good passes. Like, do you remember Josh Anderson trying to make a pass 2 years ago? So much has happened with this team that it's hard to even explain it, because I think the overall like possession numbers or whatever that are kind of like the new thing, or even expected goals that are how we measure team success today, I don't think it properly measures how big the change has been because that initial point where Marty St. Louis took over, remember, they had Arturi Lehkonen. They had Tyler Toffoli. Like, they had good to very good pieces who are now gone, and they're still better. It's an exciting time to be a Montreal Canadiens fan, folks. A very, very exciting time. Adam Glingman says, Bergevin getting Nick Suzuki by accident is the best movie ever made. Yeah, by far. Can you imagine what the Montreal Canadiens would be if he got the guy he wanted? Cody Glass? Man. Terry M says, NHL makes no sense, and that's why it will never be taken seriously like the NFL or NBA. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. I guess you're just not happy with something. Anyway, I'm going to read through here. Jay Carter says, at what point does Kipper finally admit Suzuki is a valid 1C? They won't. I'm going to let folks in on a little bit of an inside track here. I've worked in media now full-time since 2012. And I'm not trying to like brag or anything, because frankly, I don't think I'm special. There's lots of people who came up around the same time as me or after who are better writers, better analysts, whatever. But when I came in and I was writing for Habs Eyes and the Prize, which I am now as well, you can find my articles there usually every Friday on Habs Eyes and the Prize. I wrote about Sam Montembeault last week. When I was doing that, breaking in with Marc Dumont and a bunch of other talented people that you still see on this show today, guys like Scott Matla, women like Laura Saba, Matt Drake, who's still there, Patrick Bexel, amazing, amazing people. What set us apart from media is that we paid a lot more attention. I think that there is a big problem in how stripped down our media is today, in that we see one job only in sports media, and that's the beat reporter. The beat reporter plays a role, but the beat reporter is not an analyst. There is nothing about being a reporter that talks to players after the games that gives you an insight into what's going on in the game. That's something that's learned. You have to put in the effort. Now, some do. Most don't. And that's not their fault, because that's not actually their job. You're supposed to have somebody to do the analysis. And now, more often than not, you've got former players who might have something to contribute, but aren't analysts, and sometimes don't have like the bird's eye view that you actually want an analyst to have. They have their own inside track, and that's fine, but they can't be the analyst. And then you have the insider who doesn't actually provide anything or necessarily know anything about hockey. They provide background in the business side to the program so that they can plan what to talk about. But they don't actually know the hockey stuff. They know the access stuff. So if you want to be ahead of the game on hockey analysis and understanding who's good in the NHL and who's not, read analysts, people who actually dig into what players do. And I noticed that being at Eyes on the Prize, when Mark and I were doing our stuff, we would write something, and then 3 months to 2 years later, it'd get picked up in legacy media. Like, they're just behind, and you will not see seriously changing of the conversation on Nick Suzuki unless the Canadiens were to go deep this year in the playoffs. It's really the only thing that could get national, non-Canadiens focused people to understand how good Nick Suzuki is when he's on the national stage. They won't look at the numbers. They won't break it down. They don't watch the Canadiens enough to actually know what they're talking about. They watch them on like Saturday nights or like highlights. They don't actually see the nitty gritty. But people who do, they know. Nick Suzuki is a number one center. Sorry, he'd probably be a number one defenseman too. I'm not going to shortchange Nick Suzuki. I'm never going to fail to believe in that guy again. Claire says, what are you drinking, Andrew? NyQuil in a mason jar. No, it's a homemade iced tea. Not Long Island, though. It's just a 4-liter jug. I put 4 tea bags in it. And then, hot water. Half cup of sugar. Squirt of honey. And I usually juice a citrus fruit and throw in like a half teaspoon of citric acid. That's what it is. Giving you iced tea recipes on Game Over Montreal. Let's see what else we got here. Denny said they said he wasn't top 10, but close. Ranked him around Sebastian Aho. I mean, Sebastian Aho is a very good player, but Nick Suzuki is making himself part of a different conversation. And I'll be the first to say that when Team Canada named their roster for the Four Nations face-off, at that point in the season, I understand why Nick Suzuki was left off, because he started the season pretty slow, as he usually does. But I think we're seeing now that that kind of decision-making needs to be thrown out. And doubting Nick Suzuki is a bad decision. Bad decision. Trick says NHL insiders give out team press releases early. That's it. I mean, pretty much, right? Like, what are you really getting with rumor mongering? And I remember that at EOTP, and I'm talking a lot about EOTP. I apologize. I'm kind of like retrospecting my career in a way, but being back there now, sorry, and like reintroducing myself to that community in this partnership with Game Over Network here, where they're going to be part of our stuff and we're going to be part of their stuff a little bit. It is interesting, and I lost my train of thought there. I apologize. But that whole who is top 10, who isn't top 10, like, you're never going to convince certain people, right? Because certain people only recognize name value. Sebastian Aho has been better longer, so they will always choose Sebastian Aho. I think Jay Fresh did like a big thread on this recently on the Nazi website, and he had put Suzuki up against like a bunch of people, and they're just, when you have players who have been around in more playoffs, they will have more name recognition, so you'll have people be underestimated. But Nick Suzuki is an absolute baller, and people will continue to underestimate him at their peril. Sorry. Adam Glingan says Suzuki is a leader, not just a player. 100% agree. 100% agree. And it's the approach that he takes to the game. That's the big thing, is the approach that he takes to the game is so much more introspective and like total than most other players. I think he is honestly one of the smartest hockey minds in the NHL, in the National Hockey League. That's what I think about Suzuki. Ian Patterson says KK was supposed to be the young center to get us into the finals, but Suzuki took on that role and never looked back. Yeah, he did. No doubt about it. I think the difference between Suzuki and Kotkaniemi, yes, it's a talent thing for sure, because like, let's be real, Kotkaniemi has talent, but not at the same level as Nick Suzuki. The processor is not the same. The ability to layer skills is not the same, but the approach is very different. And I'm not saying that Kotkaniemi shouldn't have been any better. I think he should have been better. With good development, he would have been a better player. But Nick Suzuki doesn't see a challenge to him as a bad thing, I don't think. And I got the feeling that Kotkaniemi was a little bit more worried about Nick Suzuki and what that meant for his ascension, whereas Nick Suzuki just put his head down and went to work. And that could just be my impression of it. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's how I kind of saw the situation watching from afar. Now, keep in mind, I was not watching the Habs as closely then as I am now, so I could be totally off. But that's one of the impressions that I had. KK also doesn't have leader quality, as Claire says. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think some players don't, Frederick Ouellette says, is Nick a top 10 center in the NHL? Well, let's check quickly, and we'll go by a very simple measure. We'll use goals above replacement. I'm just going to check charts on Evolving Hockey right now. Leaders for this year. This won't include this game, but Suzuki. No, he's not currently top 10, I guess. These numbers change so much in such a short amount of time. Like, previously, he's been in the top 6 or 7, and right now he's like around 30th. But either way, the gap is just not that large among the top players in that position, outside of like the really, really top guys, who are scoring like 50 goals and stuff. All right. Bernardo Sonia says Suzuki rocked Barkov in all 4 games, and it's kind of stunning. Yeah, I mean, the Canadiens have not let the Panthers get away with anything. And I think that's something that's been interesting to watch after, the previous couple of years, where during this rebuild, the Panthers have had games where they have taken major liberties on the Canadiens. Major liberties. Canadiens are no longer standing for it. And that's without Xhekaj. Apologies. Gotta go that. Yeah, I mean, let's not talk about KK too much. We don't need to be talking about things that upset us, all right? We can have some fun, because this was a hype game. The Canadiens are going to make the playoffs this year. This is my prediction. I know it's a safe prediction right now, but that is the kind of game that changes a season, and I think the season was already going in the right direction, but it's hard to underemphasize. The feeling that I have after this one is similar, but in a different way, to the Centennial game, when the Canadiens ran roughshod over the Bruins, which they have an opportunity to do on Thursday night. Now, how great would that be to wax Brad Marchand's new team and then his old team in the space of a couple of days? That'd be fantastic. Kay says, once on a show, Mark said something about how the Habs have a great pack mentality, and I think that's true. Yeah, I mean, we talk all the time, right, Kay, about the power of friendship. This is a team that thrives on the power of friendship. They're together. The idea of building that culture, we heard it a lot, and the importance of character from the Bergevin regime. Now we've actually seen what that can do, right? On a rebuilding team that shouldn't be in this position. Let's be honest about it. They should not be here right now. They've developed something very special. I think the Canadiens, no matter what way this goes, what they top out as, they should be proud of what they've accomplished in such a short window of time. Trinka says, this was the Panthers game 2 years ago against the Leafs where Keith Tkachuk called the Panthers soft and they went to the finals. I mean, I wouldn't say that the Canadiens are going to go to the finals, but it does kind of have that feel, doesn't it? Adam says, I always forget that Suzuki is kind of apprenticed under Danault, also an underappreciated great hockey man. You know what? That's a good point. But I also don't want to take anything really away from Nick, because look at his junior career. There's not very many players who you can look at and like go back and look at the games. Nick Suzuki engineered a reverse sweep in the OHL playoffs. Like, he is a gamer among gamers. He is absolutely incredible. Adam Glingen says, what are the metrics for defining a top 10 center? I was just going by Evolving Hockey's goals above replacement metric. It's not perfect. It's not absolute. There is no absolute. When you get into the top 10 of like a position player, there's always going to be disagreements. There's always going to be quibbles. There's always going to be opinion. I mean, whenever we're talking about Nick Suzuki also, like, all of us who are watching him game in, game out, we're going to factor in things that are not going to be picked up in metrics, just because metrics can't be perfect, right? Like, how do you quantify the fact that Nick Suzuki is used in literally every single situation as the first choice by every coach he's had? Whether it's Marty St. Louis, whether it's Dominique Ducharme, like whether it's Claude Julien, like all of them trusted him right away. Claude Julien, who trusts no one, trusted him right away. Like, how do you quantify that? How do you quantify that he's always there in big moments? Not just because he's always going to be out on the ice when the Canadiens are trailing or whatever, but he's always the one engineering the play or finishing it. Like, he's not just on the ice. He's involved constantly. He's implicated, we'll say. Ian Patterson says, yes, that was an epic run of juniors run and lost in the semis. Yeah, I think they lost in the semis or the final. Adam says, okay, Suzuki is the 8th highest scoring center in terms of points right now this season. I mean, hey, yeah, if you want to just use points, top 10. Trinka says, which would be better for development this year, fighting their way to get into the playoffs and missing out, but coming back hungry, or making the playoffs and likely going out early. Trinka, I think making the playoffs is a huge plus. I think that it allows the organization to see how players who are part of the future but haven't yet been tested react in the playoffs? Like, is Juraj Slavkovsky in the playoffs going to be the Slavkovsky we see day to day in the regular season, or is he going to be the guy that shows up once every like 8 or so games that just absolutely dominates? Is that playoff Slavkovsky? Because if it is, the Canadiens just learned something very important to make the playoffs, right? And if he isn't, they also learned something very important, that maybe he's not ready to be that guy daily yet, even when the chips are on the line. Lane Hutson, in the playoffs, does his size become a factor? Is that some area of struggle? Probably not. But either way, the Canadiens learned something in the playoffs. Can he, adapt to the rule changes, which we all know are real, but the refs tell us aren't? All that kind of stuff is very important, I think, from an organizational standpoint, evaluating and going forward, but also for an evaluating each player and figuring out what they actually have, what they need to acquire, what they need to build. But at the same time, like, going out early, unless they get swept, which I don't think is likely based on how they're playing right now, it doesn't really matter if they lose. Unless they play Toronto, then they have to win. But losing is okay because they're not supposed to be there. I don't think they'll get crushed by it. I think they'll be more hungry because they'll see what it takes, right? This is a team, we've talked about it constantly. They don't even have a second line center. Kay says, from Prion to Emmerich, the Habs defeating the Florida Panthers prevented Carolina, Toronto, Tampa, and Florida from all clinching a playoff berth tonight. Kay says, a hater's dream. Hate, hate, hate. That's fantastic. That's the kind of stuff that, like, a team rallies around, too. Should we do, let's just switch over to the question and answer here thing, because you know what? I'm just having too much fun reading your guys' comments. We're going to show you guys our other partner here, St. Motel, and then I'm going to switch over to our overtime segment where we can do some question and answer, because it's hard to even keep my thoughts straight on this game because, first of all, there's so much to talk about. And second of all, it was just so fun. Like, I'm so hyped up for this team right now that it's hard to, like, properly explain my thoughts and, like, cogently put them together in a way that makes sense on the fly here. So let's go question and answer after you learn about Le St. Motel. Looking to make awesome memories with your friends? Take some promotional pictures or videos for your business? Check out Le St. Motel in Montreal's Sud-Ouest borough. It's an amazing selfie studio located in Montreal's historic Chateau Saint-Ambroise, right next to Inchu Bijou. It boasts 12-plus unique decors for you to enjoy and make memories with. Hop into their iconic heart-shaped ball pit, or transport yourself back in time to Expo 67. Le St. Motel can also come to you with mobile decor setups available to rent for events, including setup and takedown, or you can head to lesaintmotel.com right now for more details, or to check out their amazing decors that are always being updated. Now, let's get back to the show, but before you do, make sure you subscribe to Game Over Montreal, Game Over Network, and smash like on this video because it really helps us out. That's right, less bearded me. Smash like on this video, smash subscribe. It really does help the Game Over Network, which is trying to do cool things all across Canada. I am Andrew Berkshire. This is Game Over Montreal, and this is our overtime segment where we go to our chat to get some questions to continue talking about this game, because I'm not ready to stop talking about this game. It was a hell of a game. I did see one, I mentioned her here earlier in the chat, from Adam N7777, says apparently Suzuki is the third player ever to score goals in overtime and regulation within 40 seconds of each other. The other two, Rantanen and Ovechkin. That's some pretty elite status. It's also very interesting that that's, both modern players, but I would say it probably has a lot to do with 3-on-3. Can anybody check on that and see if the Ovechkin one was in 3-on-3 overtime or not? I'm assuming the Rantanen one was, because I don't even know if he played before 3-on-3. But that's really interesting. Very, very interesting. Puts Suzuki in one heck of a class. Let's check some more comments here. I see Romelli talking about Fowler, because Ian had said it'd be ideal if Habs could clinch with games left somehow and give Fowler a game before joining Laval for a run. And Romelli points out that Fowler cannot play for both Montreal and Laval. That's right, because it is after the window where you can send player down. So if Fowler signs a pro contract with Montreal, he cannot be sent down to Laval. He can sign a pro contract with Laval, but that doesn't burn a year off of his contract with Montreal, and he wouldn't be able to go back to school, so it doesn't really benefit him in any way to do that. So if he does leave college, I would expect him to sign in Montreal. But, Marty's pretty gun shy about starting young goaltenders, I think, and he's sticking with Monty a lot. I hope we see Dobesh a little bit down the stretch, but yeah, I would like to see Fowler. I do think that there is something special in the water there with Fowler. I don't know if he needs to marinate another year in college. Like, what else can he accomplish? But at the same time, you don't need to rush him, right? There's no need right this moment for Fowler, but he is tantalizing. I do think he's the goaltender of the future. Trizek says preemptively muted. No, I made a note of it this time and made sure that I didn't. I always try to mute during the ads so that I don't make breathing noises or cough or sneeze or something or talk. But yeah, sometimes I forget. Ian Patterson says, okay, so if they sign him to an entry level, he can't play both. I'd say he's best in Laval for their run this season, but that he's not going back to college. Of course, that's if he's not going back to college. Yeah, I don't think he'll. I don't know if it makes sense for him. Outch says Suzuki's going to break a point per game this season. I mean, what is he at now? He's got to be close, right? Because he's almost at the same amount of assists. Yeah, he's almost at 80 points now, isn't he? Or did he get to 81? Sorry, I'm trying to look it up quick, but it wasn't loading. Yeah, so he's at 79 points now. He's definitely going to hit a point per game. Romelli asked, does Suzuki reach 90? Spicy. I don't know. Does Hudson reach 70? I predicted Hudson would reach 70 points in October. And I'm still on board with that. I think he does it. I also think that he is going to win Rookie of the Year. I understand the argument for Dustin Wolf, and I think it's a great argument. I understand the argument for Macklin Celebrini, and I also think it's a great argument. And I think the NHL will push Macklin Celebrini hard because that's what they want, is for the first overall guy to win. But they also could have pushed hard for Connor McDavid. And I know that there was a mitigating circumstance with the injuries, but I don't know. I think Lane Hudson has it. I said when I was on Hyperdrive Hockey early this season that the right situation at the right time for Lane Hudson, and he's the right player, is going to put him in a situation where he could win the Calder. And look at him. He's going to get the rookie record for assists in a year for defensemen. He is so close already to passing the highest mark that any Canadiens defenseman, period, has had since 1990, which is 64 points, shared between Andrei Markov and Sheldon Sorey, and I believe the 06-07 and 07-08 seasons, respectively. Sorey was the first one. So this is unprecedented. We are seeing so many special things happening in this Canadian season. The storylines, it is astonishing to just view it from a ways away and not being in like the day-to-day grind that I usually am in covering hockey, because I've been so busy doing the business side of stuff this year. I feel like there's so many stories that haven't even been written about because there's so much going on, and there's just less great coverage now in the blogosphere than there used to be, unfortunately. Zachary Fairbrother says he never quits on a play. He's a leader too, you can tell. I'm guessing this is still about Suzuki. This whole show is going to be about Nick Suzuki. I regret nothing. Nick Suzuki and Lane Hudson. Hudson was exactly what the Habs needed, and Marty is exactly the coach that Lane needed. Yeah, Ian, that is a great point, and I think that Marty has, depending on who you're talking to, some people will say he's been treated with kid gloves by media in particular, and maybe that's true. He has the advantage of being a Hockey Hall of Famer who was recently retired. So one thing that you have to remember is a lot of the guys who cover hockey adore hockey players, and they don't want to get on their bad side, right? So they will probably be very nice to Marty St. Louis, even though sometimes he doesn't really like media that much. But at the same time, I think we've kind of talked about Marty St. Louis in a disrespectful way. Both fan base, media, bloggers, whatever, independent, legacy, everything. We kind of talk about how he is not an experienced coach and coaching like Bantam before this. And, like systems wise, he's not as sophisticated as other NHL coaches. But if you go back and listen to what Marty St. Louis said when he took over, I remember I listened to a podcast that he did with Hockey Arsenal, and he talked about like his approach to the game. And I remember when he took over, he was talking about instead of systems, he had concepts, right? And the concepts advanced every year, and everything was about like you learn this much at this point, and then once you've mastered that, you move on to the next thing. And things took time. There are still things about the Montreal Canadiens and the way they play that are a work in progress at best. There's areas of the team where they could use some improvement. But I think Marty St. Louis is so much more intelligent in both how he handles his players and the things that he focuses on how to coach them than people give him credit for. Just in terms of psychologically being in it with his team, he is ahead of, I think, most coaches in this league. So there's going to be things, every coach has a weakness, right? And I think in-game management, definitely a weakness relative to like the other top coaches in the game for Marty St. Louis. There are things that he's going to miss. There are times where he is outcoached systems-wise, but considering what he's been given to work with over his tenure with the Montreal Canadiens, what he started with and where it's going now, another guy we got to stop doubting. And I think this is, as a fellow short guy, that chip on your shoulder that short players in hockey play with has always been something that I like am attracted to, I guess. So the fact that Marty still has that chip on his shoulder now as a coach, fantastic. Freddie Ouellette says Hudson's at 62 points, 57 assists. So reaching 65 assists is doable, but most points, I don't think so. Larry Murphy also had something like 18 goals. Yeah. I would not be surprised at all if at a certain point Hudson is scoring around 15 goals a year, both because scoring has gone up and also like watching him in college, he will get a lot more chances once he's more comfortable at the NHL level than he's gotten this year. And I think he's gotten more chances to score than what people think, and probably should have a couple more goals this year just based on luck, but he hasn't had it all go his way. Even if it looks like things go his way a lot, he is just so damn good. Trinket says Marty is spicy with the media and I love it, but at the same time, when it's deserved, he's kind and understanding. He's like an onion. Yeah, I mean, he's a person, right? I think that's something that just gets lost so often. I find we were talking about Kokaniemi earlier, and it's one of the things that as I get older, I am not able to partake as much in some of like the fan base behaviors, like the people who just really hate Kokaniemi. I don't get that because I look at it from like he was just a kid in Montreal, and it's not like he was put in a good situation. It's not like he was treated very well. Does it suck that he signed somewhere else? Sure, but also, how'd that work out? Not well. So I feel like it's one of those things like you don't need to care so much about that. I look at players who've moved on from the team, and I don't understand the ire. A good buddy of mine was like dogging on Justin Barron today, and I was like, just leave Justin Barron alone, man. He got us Alex Carrier. Can't be upset about that. Although that is one area that I'd like to see a little bit of a change. I'm not sure what exactly to do, but I'm not a huge fan of Matheson Carrier. I think they need to break that up. Adam Glingman says he should get it. He could get that in a game at this point. Are you talking about Hudson? Yeah. So yeah, Hudson is he's gonna get that assist record. Like it's not even a doubt, I think. Kev's the best says, have we glazed Gouli and how great he's back yet? No. I meant to. But let's talk about Caden Gouli, because what the hell? How is he playing so damn well after missing so much time and dealing with a laceration on his calf? Why is he not slow? Why does he already have his timing back? Why are he and Hudson just like the chemistry is palpable between the two of them, especially in the offensive zone? They just both know what to do. Caden Gooley, I am so impressed, as pretty much always. That kid, I say he's a kid. He's not really a kid anymore, but he kind of also still is. Like, this team has something special here, folks. Like, when Reinbacher makes the club, when Demidov comes over next year, it's going to be really damn fun. It's going to be really damn fun. It's already fun. It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't think anybody expected this much this year. I think we all wanted to see a big improvement. But this, the whole world is going to shit. But this is good. Before we close it out, I did want to mention something because I just thought it was hilarious. I don't know how much you all are paying attention to things. I know there's a lot going on, and frankly, it's a nightmare to try to keep up in the news. Things are happening at such a rapid pace that trying to stay informed is impossible. It's on purpose an avalanche of stuff. However, in this ongoing economic war between Canada and the United States, the Trump administration listed some things, some problems that they had with Canada that are harming trade. And one of them was Quebec's Bill 96, which, for those who don't know, is that businesses here in Quebec have to operate in French. The internal workings of the business have to be in French. It's a French province. Makes sense. For a long time, it wasn't that way. A lot of the money in Quebec was centered in Anglophone families and Anglophone businesses. French people were very oppressed in Quebec for a very long time. But, of course, there are some draconian things about the way that Quebec protects its language, even though it should protect French. There are some times where they step over the line and things get contentious. But the Trump administration wants to go after Bill 96 and tell Quebec not to do French in business. And I just got to say, as somebody who's lived in Quebec since 2005, Quebec doesn't listen when Canada talks because they don't have to. They're good at advocating for themselves. Or I guess we are. I'm a Quebecer. I've been here for 20 years. You think a foreign country is going to tell Quebec not to do business in French? Good luck. Or should I say bon chance? It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to go very well. And I feel like there's a temperature cooling a little bit across Canada for like the anti-American sentiment. I saw that there was some sporting events recently in Manitoba where like there was no booing of the American national anthem. I don't think that's going to happen here. Much of Canada might move on a little bit, but I think the rubber band has snapped for most of us. But in Quebec, you think that Quebecers are going to just sit down and watch a country talking about adding like another 300 million Anglos and talk about how like you need to stop speaking French in business? There's going to be some Molotov cocktails thrown at some American products soon if they keep on down this road in Quebec, because don't screw with Quebec. Seriously, like, we don't mess around here. It's not the same as English Canada. As they said in South Park, French Canada is the best Canada. All right? Kay says, I'll make them a double down. Trinket says, be Frencher. That's right. We better be more French. How ironic would it be that the idiocy from America gets Anglophones across Canada to stand up for French? I grew up in Western Canada. Like, hating Quebec was like part of the DNA. It's so dumb and uninformed, but it is just part of that Western Canadian identity is like Quebec are a bunch of moochers and we make all the money, even though Quebec taxes actually paid for the oil industry to be built in Alberta. But anyway, we're going off topic here on politics. I could wax on about it forever. You all know I have a background in politics, but Canada forever, Quebec forever, fuck the USA, free Palestine, trans rights are human rights. This is Game Over Montreal. I love you all. Every single person who tuned in here. This is a place for you. The Montreal Canadiens are going to do something special. I don't know if they're going to win a playoff round or anything, but they're going to make it in there, and they're going to make us proud. And the future is very bright. It is very bright. All right, we'll see you again on Thursday. Habs against the Bruins. Kay will be here. We'll see who else.